morning again. David Durfee. I live in Shaftesbury. I represent Shaftesbury, Sunderland, and Bostonbury in Bennington County. And we'll go around the table first and introduce ourselves.
I'm Leland Morgan. I represent Grand Isle County and the western portion of Milton.
Jed Lipsky, Lamoille 1 District, Town of Stowe, Orso.
Polo player, him. Richard Nelson, Orleans 1, Derby.
Michelle Boslin. I live in Northern Windham County. I represent Westminster, Rockingham, and Brookline.
Greg Burt, Cabot, Danville, Peacham, and I have 4 girls that really, really want a horse.
Oh, I can't see you, but.
Right here.
Oh, okay, right there.
I'm
I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong screen. Okay.
Hi, Representative John O'Brien. I represent Royalton in my hometown of Tunbridge. We have a perch run and a mini.
Okay.
Hi, Heather Supernat. I represent Windsor 4, the towns of Barnard, Pomfret, Bridgewater, West Hartford.
So that's the committee. We're at full strength today. Sidonia, our committee assistant, is the only other person in the room. And we've got about 45 minutes. So good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for allowing this Zoom option on such a snowy day. My name is Mindy Hinsdale. I'm a 7th generation Vermonter. I grew up in Charlotte, attended CVU, and graduated from UVM. I owned and operated Steeple Ridge Farm, a horse farm first in Ferrisburgh, then in Charlotte for 35 years. I sold the farm 8 years ago and am now a small business owner. I'm a longtime member of the Vermont Farm Bureau and am currently serving as the Chittenden County Vice President. I am also on the board of the Vermont Hunter Jumper Association, where I was president for many years, the Green Mountain Horse Association board, as well as an active member of the Vermont Horse Council, where I'm on the Equine Industry Committee. After selling my beloved horse farm, you would think I would have retired from the horse industry, but to the contrary, I have remained very active in the Vermont horse community and have been an advocate for the horse industry for many years as a volunteer. Excuse me. In the 35 years I owned and operated Steeple Ridge Farm, I was a full-time horse farmer, making 80 to 100% of my income from working on the horse farm. There were several years when I supplemented my income with a part-time school teaching position. I am very grateful to be able to speak with you today on behalf of the Vermont horse industry. As I was here last year to testify, I won't go through my whole history, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the 2 horse farms, 1 dairy, and 1 replacement heifer I purchased and renovated to suit my needs for horses. I have been enjoying listening to some of your committee meetings. Thank you for making the remote option possible. In listening to Jill Remick, Director of Property Valuation and Review, speak on current use last week, I was struck with how many things horse farms do that qualify us for current use. Jill showed a slide outlining the purpose of the current use program. The horse industry in Vermont nicely fits into the reason the current use program exists. The first purpose she outlined: to encourage and assist the maintenance of Vermont's productive agricultural land and forest land. Jill described current use as a working lands program. Working horse farms need large open spaces to operate, including hayland, pasture land, and land for exercising the horses. Horse farmers not only work the land, but need a large parcel of land to be able to properly house and care for the horses. The rule of thumb has always been 1 acre per horse, more if putting up your own hay. The second purpose of current use was to encourage and assist in the land's conservation and preservation for future productive use and for the protection of natural ecological systems. When farmers go out of business, Vermont needs to encourage that land to stay open and be farmed in whatever capacity will encourage that land to stay open, not just for today, but for the future. Horse farms help keep land open now and for its future productive use. The third purpose of the current use program is to prevent the accelerated conversion of these lands to more intensive use by the pressure of property taxation at values incompatible with the productive capacity of the land. Horse farms are now in the same situation as dairy farms were back in the 1970s. Vermont is now losing horse farms at a rapid rate. In 1978, when current use began, dairy farms were in trouble and going out of business fast. Senator Bobby Starr helped design the current use program, including being the force behind eliminating property tax on ag buildings. Horse farmers are being taxed out of business, even when their land is enrolled in current use. Horse farms need the tax help that including their ag buildings will provide. The fourth purpose, to achieve more equitable taxation for undeveloped lands. Horse farmers need this help more than ever now. When I started my horse business over 40 years ago, the financial situations were much different than they are now. Overall, property taxes were significantly lower. I was grateful for the help I received having my land enrolled in the current use program. The savings I received was a significant boost to my bottom line. At that time, my tax bill wasn't a huge burden. The house I lived in was quite modest. I didn't have an indoor arena. The town didn't put a large value on the dairy barn I had converted from a freestall cow barn to horse stalls. Also, the cost of living was lower. Food prices, gas, price for a bale of hay and a bag of grain, etc. I could come up with a financial business plan that worked. In today's Vermont economy, with the very high tax rates, cost of feed, etc., it's nearly impossible. In the early 80s, when I started my horse business, hay was $1 a bale. I see hay prices as high as $12 a bale today. Grain and shavings have skyrocketed. Most farmers get a little break with not having to pay sales tax on agricultural items. Horse farmers in Vermont don't qualify for this sales tax break. Why are horse farmers excluded from this agricultural sales tax exemption? The fifth purpose of the current use program is to encourage and assist in the preservation and enhancement of Vermont's scenic natural resources. Jill said, and I quote, "Current use was started to preserve scenic landscapes, make Vermont a lovely place to be." Horse farmers definitely check this box. What will Vermont look like if there are no more pastures filled with beautiful horses, hay fields being cut to produce hay for the horses to eat? People want to come to Vermont to enjoy the scenic landscapes kept open, to feed and care for all the livestock Vermont is so lucky to have. Vermont is a leader in its desire to keep the beautiful views and landscapes open. After hearing testimony from Ryan Patch, Agriculture, Climate, and Land Use Policy Manager for the Department of Agriculture on January 31st, I feel more determined than ever to help not only horse farmers, but all types of farming thrive in Vermont. It was shocking to learn how quickly we are losing open, productive land. Our open land needs to be preserved now, so there will be open land in the future for the production of more food. I believe horse farms can help with this. While I was struggling, I'm going to share a little bit of a story that I shared last year and add a little to it. When I was struggling toward the end of my 35-year tenure at Steeple Ridge Farm, I was trying to come up with ways to keep my farm, the farm I struggled to build and was passionate about keeping. I was face to face with excessively high prices for property taxes, workers' compensation, payroll taxes, feed, farm help, even finding help. I was getting older, working harder, and my profit margin was getting smaller and smaller. I had tried to come up with a reasonable succession plan, but nothing was coming together. So I thought about cutting my business in half to a more manageable size and turning my older horse barn into storage. But the town said zoning wouldn't allow storage businesses unless it was for agricultural storage. What a ridiculous notion. Agricultural storage? What farmer who has plenty of barn space, and if they don't, they build another, needs off-site storage? Then it occurred to me that I had a parcel I could till for a community garden space. People could rent a garden plot, which would include a storage locker for their gardening items. I never got to see this idea through, as out of the blue, someone came to me wanting to buy my farm, and I ended up selling it. But in listening to Ryan Patch, it occurred to me that horse farms could be very helpful in keeping land open and possibly renting some of it to people to grow their own food, or even food that they could market. We need to think outside the box and figure out how to diversify farming to keep Vermont land open. But horse farms will not be helpful in this endeavor if they continue to be taxed out of business. I understand the argument that horse farms aren't producing food, but neither are flower farms or sheep farms that just produce wool. Allowing only horse breeding farms to be fully accepted in the current use program doesn't make sense to me. I understand that having a replacement heifer operation makes sense. The turnaround to cash flow for cow breeding operations is much quicker than for horse breeding operations. A dairy cow can be bred as early as 2 years old, then start producing milk. A heifer replacement farm can sell calves to farmers who need them shortly after they are born. Beef cows can be bred as young as 12 to 15 months old. The earliest horses can be bred as 3 years old, and most are older. Then, to make money from the breeding business, the foals need to grow up and be trained. You shouldn't start riding a horse or pony until they are at least 3 years old. Many are still too immature to start at that age. Training is a long process, and a lot of money is put into the animal with feed, care, vet, farrier bills, etc. So the turnaround to profit time is much longer and more complicated for horses. It makes more sense for horse farms to purchase young horses when they are 4 to 5 years old and then finish their training. My point is, a horse farmer cannot be exclusively in the breeding business and make at least 51% of their income from the breeding portion of their business. That business must teach lessons, board horses, do summer camps, etc. So making breeding the only requirement for horse farm buildings to be considered ag buildings and be treated the same as other ag businesses under the current use program isn't realistic. The definition used in the current use program needs to be expanded to include the raising of horses. In all the other Vermont definitions of agriculture, it is understood that raising horses includes boarding, training, and lessons, as they are integral parts of horse care and the financial success of the business. A successful business plan for a horse farm is much different from a successful business plan for a dairy farm or heifer replacement operation. The IRS considers the boarding of horses an agricultural venture. In publication 225 put out by the IRS, the term livestock includes cattle, horses, dairy, fish, fruit, etc. In Title 29, Section 780.328, the term livestock includes cattle, horses, goats, or other domestic animals ordinarily raised or used on the farm. Under the same title, Section 780.120, what constitutes raising livestock is breeding, fattening, feeding, and general care of livestock. When I paid income taxes to the IRS in Vermont, all my income from boarding, lessons, horse events, summer camps, and hauling was considered agricultural income and claimed on the Schedule F tax form. So what is standing in the way of having horse farms treated equally to the other Vermont farms and to have fair taxation throughout the current use program? The answer, the definition of agriculture used by current use. As you heard in earlier testimony from Jackie Folsom, president of Vermont Farm Bureau, the Vermont Horse Council, with the help of the Vermont Law School, has uncovered at least 15 different definitions of agriculture in our state statutes. What we have discovered is that people who run equine businesses earning at least 51% of their gross income from equine business activities are considered farmers, and their properties are considered farms in all but one definition, current use. All horse farmers in Vermont are required to meet all the RAP requirements. We are farmers when it comes to water quality issues, manure management, etc. I think you all received this memorandum that was put out by the Vermont Law School that has the results of their research on Vermont statutes relevant to equine businesses. I won't read the whole document, but would like to highlight some of the definitions that were found. Under Title 10, Conservation and Development, in Chapter 151, State Land Use and Development Plans, 4.1 states farming means A, the cultivation or other use of land for growing food, fiber, etc., or B, the raising, feeding, or management of livestock. Livestock means equines. Or G, the raising, feeding, or management of 4 or more equines owned or boarded by the farmer, including training, showing, and providing instruction and lessons in riding, training, and the management of equines. In 4.1.1, livestock means equines. In 4.1.2, if one raises, feeds, or manages horses, then one is engaged in farming. In 4.1.3, if one raises, feeds, or manages 4 or more equines, the farmer owns or boards, including training, showing, and providing instruction and lessons in riding, training, and the management of equines. Then one is engaged in farming. All of these same definitions I just read apply to the required agricultural practices rule, the RAPs, as found in Title 32, Taxation and Finance, which is where the current use statute is. Also found in the Title 32, Taxation and Finance, in Chapter 124, Agricultural Lands and Forest Lands. Under 1.1.2, Agricultural Lands states if land lacks a house site, is at least 25 acres, and is in active use to pasture livestock, that land is agricultural land. If in 1.1.6, if a farmer owns land and that land is part of the overall farm unit, then that land is presumptively used for agricultural purposes. This is the statute that speaks to why all my land, when I owned my farm, including the outdoor riding arena, horse pastures and paddocks, as well as the land my barn sat on, was all enrolled in the current use program. Later in my testimony, I will outline how some of these parcels of land, which are enrolled in current use, are being taken out of the current use program. Still under Title 32, Taxation and Finance, 1.2, Farmer. If a person earns at least half of the person's annual gross income from the business of farming as defined under 26 CFR Section 1.175-3, then one is a farmer. This 26 CFR Section 1.175-3 is an IRS definition, which reads, if one is a taxpayer and cultivates, operates, or manages a farm for gain or profit, either as an owner or a tenant, then one is engaged in the business of farming. Still under Title 32, Taxation and Finance, and the definition of farm buildings. For any farm building or other farm improvement, one, a farmer actively uses that building or improvement as part of a farming operation, then it is a farm building. Then this is where it gets confusing under this statute. In 1.3.3, these definitions of farm building affect neither the application of the definition of farming in 10 VSA section 6001, nor the definition of farm structure in 24 VSA section 4413 D1, and so on. And then in chapter 125 exemptions, horses in 2.1, horses are exempt from property taxes. So all of these, we really don't understand this particular section 100%. But I'm guessing that this is where the liberty is taken with horse operations and why horse operations are not fully in current use, because they are referring back to statutes that are in the land development and conservation statutes, which claims horse farmers are 100% farmers. The Vermont Law School summarizes their findings this way. Equine businesses may generally constitute farming in two ways. First, the raising, feeding, or management of equines constitutes farming. And second, the raising, feeding, or management of 4 or more equines the farmer owns or boards, including training, showing, and the providing instruction and lessons in riding, training, and the management of equines constitutes farming. The exceptions are notable, says the Vermont Law School. Vermont current use statutes exclude many forms of equine businesses from the definitions of agricultural land, farmer, and farm buildings that do not satisfy certain conditions, thereby disqualifying those businesses from tax relief from current use. The current use program has been revised and tweaked several times since its inception in 1978. Farmers with less than 25 acres wanted to be included in the current use program, so there were provisions made for vegetable farmers and flower growers to be able to put smaller than 25-acre parcels into current use, as long as they could show they make at least $2,000 per year selling their vegetables or flowers. Simply changing the definition of agriculture in the current use statute would allow horse farmers this same tax relief. It has occurred to me that one of the reasons horse farms have been excluded from the full tax benefit current use offers, as well as sales tax exemptions on certain farm goods, is a misunderstanding and or lack of knowledge about how horses are cared for. Horses are livestock that need to be cared for on a daily basis, fed 3 to 4 times a day, stalls and run-in sheds cleaned, horses turned out who live inside, hooves picked every day, exercised 4 to 6 times per week, especially if in a training program. Turnout in the summer months can be tricky for some horses and ponies who cannot eat fresh green grass due to hormone issues, so need to be turned out on dry lot paddocks, much like cows who go out on cement pads to get fresh air and sunshine. Most horses can go out in larger fields full of grass. Horse farms need enough turnout spaces so pastures can be rotated in order to limit worm infestation and to allow grass to regrow for rotational grazing. Horse farms need safe spaces to exercise the horses, give lessons, run events, and turn horses out on bad weather days. These spaces are outdoor and indoor riding arenas. And of course, we need barns to house and care for the horses. All of this infrastructure requires acreage, which is why many horse farms meet the 25-acre minimum and are often larger if hayfields are part of the farm. I have learned of several horse farms that have recently been inspected by current use employees to see if there is any acreage that can be deemed ineligible for current use. I have been disheartened to learn that horse pasture space is being taken out, farm roads are being taken out, outdoor riding arenas are being taken out, and these parcels are being put back into the acreage that gets the full development value placed on it. In some cases, it makes a farm not able to meet the 25-acre minimum anymore. These outdoor spaces are vitally important for the care of the horses. The farmers are not going to build a house in their horse pastures or outdoor ring. I don't understand why this is happening. All of my farm acreage, including the pastures, paddocks, farm road, and outdoor ring, minus the 2-acre homestead, it was all taxed at the current use rate. As you know, none of my buildings were allowed to be enrolled in current use. As I testified last year, buildings are taxed on square footage, and that square footage of barns that house horses, especially if in a repurposed dairy barn, are quite large. How does Vermont handle unequal and often overtaxation of agricultural buildings? One of the problems is taxing on square footage. Indoor arenas and horse barns are a lot of square footage. A small indoor arena, 60 by 120, is 7,200 square feet. My indoor arena was 72 by 176, which is 12,672 square feet. The largest indoor arena I know of in Vermont is in New Haven and is a 100 by 200 foot arena. You can do the math on that one. Many buildings, including equine buildings, are considered single-purpose structures. If you don't use an indoor arena for riding lessons, then what do you use it for? Storage? Which isn't allowed in some towns, and certainly not if the land is in current use or part of the Vermont Land Trust. Prior to 1978, ag buildings were considered business inventory and taxed. So as I mentioned before, legislator Bobby Starr came up with the idea that ag buildings were farm equipment inventory, so not to tax them. This was to encourage farming. Bobby Starr's motto was, "Don't kill farmers with property taxes." As I have mentioned before, the equine industry now has this same problem. It would be nice if horse facilities weren't taxed for more than they are worth, but taxing on square footage tends to make that happen. And frankly, these buildings shouldn't be taxed at all. When I went to the town clerk to get a permit to build my indoor arena, I was told I didn't need a permit because it was for an agricultural building. I couldn't believe it. I asked for that decision to be put in writing. Yet, as soon as the agricultural building was completed, it didn't qualify as an ag building for current use purposes. We are asking Vermont to accept the fact that horse farms are keeping the land open now and for the future, and are meeting the same required agricultural practices. Until Vermont sees horse farms in this way and treats them equitably in agriculture, letting them benefit from the same tax relief current use offers, as well as other agricultural programs, we predict we will continue to lose horse farms at a rapid rate. I feel we are at a tipping point in the horse industry in Vermont. We know people who are still wanting to purchase farms. Some are trying to hold on to the ones they have. Some have already gone out of business, while others have left the state to do their business somewhere else. We are trying to encourage horse farmers to hang on and hope we can help them by letting them know progress is being made. I've created a list of what would be lost if horse farms continue to be excluded from the full benefits of current use. Loss of open productive land, including the loss of hayfields and pasture land. loss of scenic viewscapes in Vermont, loss of extended revenue for vets, farriers, feed, tax shops, etc., loss of tourism dollars for the state, loss of children actively and regularly being on farms, loss of mental health and therapy programs, a decline in the horse population, and a decline in the number of viable horse farms in Vermont. We could change this list to be, this is how equine operations, fully supported by the current use program, will support Vermont's goals. We'd see an increase in open productive land, an increase in hayland and pasture land, an increase in scenic viewscapes, support for vets, farriers, feed stores, tack shops, etc., an increase in tourism dollars to the state, an increase in children actively and regularly being on farms, an increase in and support of mental health and therapy programs, an increase in the horse population, and an increase in the number of viable horse farms. On behalf of hardworking horse farmers, the Vermont Horse Council, and many other Vermont horse organizations, I am asking you to consider a simple update to the current use program by changing the definition of agriculture as it relates to equines in the Title 32 Taxation and Finance Statute. We are not asking for the backyard horse owner or the doctor who owns an indoor arena, but for the hardworking horse farmer who earns at least 51% of their income from the business of farming. We urge you to look at the Title 10 Conservation and Development definition that uses the following language: the raising, feeding, or management of equines the farmer owns or boards, including training, showing, and providing instruction and lessons in riding, training, and the management of equines, to update the current use statute. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Mindy. I'll just point out to committee members that Mindy's testimony is available on our committee page under her name and under today's date. Mindy, you also at one point held up a memorandum, and that I think committee members received several weeks ago from Heidi in your email, and I'm not sure that it's posted, but we'll also get that up on our committee page. So that we
I
all
believe Sidonia posted that for you.
Okay, good. She's confirming that, so thank you. Any questions for Mindy? Mindy, I'll just say that you've done a lot of work here, obviously putting this together. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Do you have, or if we were to take another look at what Heidi sent us, would there be any information on the number of horse farms or total acreage and how that may have changed? Any trends, any data that is there or that we could get?
I can probably answer that a little easier than Mindy could. So we had shared with you when we completed the economic equine study that was completed back in 2019, and that does have some data in it. It is not up to date at this point, and we had been looking at trying to undertake another economic impact study, but the fundraising that we need to do for that is not going quickly enough to get it done right away. But I can certainly share the link to that information. It lives on the Vermont Horse Council's website, and I can make sure to send you the information. Part of the reason we wanted to do an updated study was to get to do a little bit deeper dive into the specific data that would help you folks with this. In terms of, I mean, we have some information about acreage and the income. We also, maintain currently a list of about some 250 or so farms that are, that would likely fall into this category in some way, shape, or form. We don't know at this point what the size of those farms is, but these are farms that are either boarding horses, providing lessons, many of them raise their own hay, or they're leasing land from neighboring farms for hay. So I'm not sure if that entirely answers, but we can get you some more information.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it would be information I think we would want to try and get our heads around at some point.
I'm also wondering if that is there's any information that would be available. We've worked with the Center for Rural Studies. That's who helped us with our initial study, and we're trying to research where there might be more information that already exists. And I don't know if that's something that, I don't know if there's a legislative council that can help with some research through the tax department, or if there's other sources of information that we could seek out.
Yeah, I think we can check with Ledge Council and with the agency. I don't know whether USDA census data has a category.
Yeah, we've asked the Center for Rural Studies. They're hopefully preparing a brief from the census data.
I suspect that somewhere it's available, so we'll all just have to ask a few questions.
Okay.
Representative Burt, question.
Thank you. So I have a bill that I'm currently working on with Ledge Council about updating current use. And thank you for sharing this. I just wrote down the language that you would like to have put in there, and I will present that to him today. Yeah. I think there are a lot of angles to come at with this. I think the value of horses in our state, it probably isn't assessed at what it really is to our communities. I think from a resiliency standpoint, and for keeping, to me, it kind of almost, and unfortunately, I don't want to, I'd be interested to see your take on this, but from my take, I'm not a horse owner myself. I think I've ridden a horse once, but I've been a farmer my whole life, right? So we're in a new era of, if I was born 100 years ago, I would be a horse owner as well. But it's kind of like the reason why we need to continue to keep our libraries. We might have an internet that has all kinds of resources for us, and there are many that are trying to close libraries, right? But I think there's an enormous amount of value in keeping horses a part of our communities and a part of our agricultural system, even if they don't have the same place that they had 100 years ago. So I totally see where you're coming from. And if we don't make sure that we are helping out the equine community, it's just, as we've all heard, it's getting harder and harder. So I'll see what I can do to help out.
That's greatly appreciated. And I really appreciate your arguments there. That's wonderful.
Heidi, did you, I'm not sure that we had you introduce yourself, so I want to give you that opportunity. And I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add as well.
Well, thank you. My name's Heidi Krantz, and I am up in Craftsbury. And I have been, I'm a former president of the Vermont Horse Council, am the chair of the Equine Industry Summit and Study Committees, and now the chair of the Equine Industry Committee. And although I've never made a living from my horses, I worked for years with the Vermont Small Business Development Center and worked with a number of equine businesses through that capacity. So understand, and my background is in agriculture, and the work that's been going on with this is I think initial efforts are maybe from about 20 years ago. So this has been going on for a little bit of time. And as Mindy talked about it, the landscape has changed in terms of where equines fit in the world, because in those 20 years, the dairy industry has changed a lot, and agriculture in general in Vermont has become much more diversified and is broadening the ways in which people are making their living off the land. So we very much appreciate the support that we've always gotten in our efforts to do this. It feels as if the timing is getting a little bit better, but it's also feels like it's a little bit more important right now, or urgent, that we try to help with this. There's and again, I wish I had some specific data for you. Anecdotally, both Mindy and I and others on our committee have talked with a number of farm owners who are generally younger. As you well know, farming is a very physical business. So these tend to be younger people who are really committed. Many are from Vermont originally, and they've gone to school and come back, and they'd like to stay in Vermont. Many are people that are moving into Vermont and would like to be in Vermont for the long haul, but it has to be viable for them too. So I think this is also a way for us to look at the whole migration of younger people in and out of our state, and how that has an impact in the long haul. It was really disheartening. There were two different farms that I learned of this year, that one left and moved into New York, and one left and moved back to New Hampshire. And that just breaks my heart, because we should have those farms here.
Representative O'Brien.
I'm not sure quite who this is for, maybe Mindy, Heidi, or even the committee, but I wonder if you sort of mentioned the 250 farms, equine farms, right, that might qualify for your idea of a current use tax break. And so I was wondering if does this committee get JFO to potentially do a study on what the hit would be to general fund and education?
Yeah, and if Representative Byrd is working on a bill at some point, or if anybody's working on a bill, check with Ledge Council and then work with JFO to see if you can get some preliminary numbers anyway. And at some point, if that were to move forward, we'd have to have that information. Yeah. So
yeah, my guess would be that out of that list, a percentage of them would not end up qualifying for numerous reasons. Either they wouldn't meet the 25-acre threshold. There certainly are people that I've spoken with who wouldn't want to pursue current use designation for other reasons. So even though they might qualify, they still would choose not to pursue it.
any other questions?
Well, I guess a follow-up, but did you define somewhere, Mindy, what those hardworking horse farms, what would qualify them as opposed to, some of the backyard horse owners that wouldn't qualify?
I
Just
think it
so-
would mostly be income. Are they really a full-time farmer doing day in and day out on the horse farm versus somebody who has another job, or whose spouse had, many people, but their spouse has another job. But really it's the income threshold that I think would make the difference. We're not looking for somebody who's purchased a horse farm as an investment or something that, they're wealthy people and they earn most of their income in other ways.
We've generally referred to the fact that they make at least 51% of their income from the equine operation. And that matches the requirement for most agriculture.
But just so you know, we've had discussions even about that 51% being too high because it doesn't really reflect, say dairy farmers who have to work off the farm now to keep the farm
Right.
going.
Yeah, I was just, as I was saying that, I was thinking about my neighbor who has a dairy farm who is, has talked often about the fact that if it weren't for the fact that his wife works in an ER, they would have a hard time keeping the farm,
Right.
So,
especially right now.
Well, the conversation is timely, also in the sense that we're getting a presentation this afternoon on current use in the in forestry sector. We're having several, so we've had several conversations. We'll have several more on current use in general. It's attracted some attention because of the statewide rising property taxes and any current use expenditure results in higher property taxes for other property owners. So that's sort of just a little context about the environment that we're all living in. And so that will be a bit of a headwind, but I think it's a good conversation to be having. I think you raised some excellent points, and I thank you for that. If there aren't any other questions for our guests, I think we can wrap this up then and say thank you to both of you. Mindy, I do want to just say in closing that I still appreciate when you came in last year, you're informing the committee and me particularly of the rodeo in Castleton, which I visited over the summer and had a great experience. So I want to plug that every time I see you.
That's great. They have a beautiful farm up there in Castleton.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, take
Thank
care
you
now.
very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to Sidonia for all her help to us.
Thank you.
All right, we will end this section of the meeting, and we have a few minutes left that we're going to just use for committee discussion. So following up on anything that committee has on your mind, and I'll just say that when we've been building next week's schedule, I've tried to build in a little more time to have those conversations. So Representative Burt, did you want to kick it off?
Sure, yeah. I guess it'd be a couple things. Like I was saying on this a few minutes ago, I'm gonna be meeting with Michael O'Grady to talk more about that current use bill. And this is very timely because this wasn't on my radar at all. So I'll probably see about adding this language in there so that equine owners are also included. And then in terms of the previous meeting and kind of all the meetings that we've had with Vermont Food Bank and related groups, one, and the reason why I waiting to say it in this meeting off the record.
We are on the record.
We are on the record.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not in front of other folks. I'm not afraid to say it on the record, but so there's a little bit of coming from just hearing the concerns of the working class. I guess I'd say the working Vermonters who don't qualify, say they're for a family of four that their income's above $57,000, which was kind of the break point that they outlined.
That's 4-person family, yes.
So, this is just an approximation, but the people in our state that live in that range that our state absolutely needs to have here, right? That are driving our economy. I think I hear concerns from them of, the fact that we know we have a need with the Vermont Food Bank in our state. That's obvious. And that we have an obligation to be taking care of the people that are in need in our state. But I think there's some, I think, real concern and justified concern that that there might not be enough being done to say, how are we creating dependency? And I don't, it's not fun to be the voice, the person that's actually asking that question or bringing it up. Because it's a lot easier politically to say, yeah, we're gonna put as much money to you as we possibly can, right? But I think I have to provide that voice too. There is concern, there's real concern that is there an enabling of dependency upon these programs? And then what the thing that I would like to see more of personally is reporting on how are we trying to decrease dependency? Like what steps is the food bank taking or the programs that they work with? Because I know food banks like Lac Resort, right? You know, they're providing the fish and not the fishing pole. So, but they work directly there with that need. I'm just wondering, you know, myself or, you know, anyone else here, just trying to raise awareness that there is a concern, a real concern among the working class of our state that their tax dollars that are coming out of their paycheck might be going to folks that are becoming dependent on a system that instead of being enabled and educated and helped toward also getting off of that dependency and being productive workers and kind of entering that working class segment.
Yeah.
So instead of going the other way. For me, I think at least like to see reporting done on that and have data. So whether it's the food bank, whether it's Department of Children and Families, or whatever departments that is, to say like, we would like to see reporting on how many people are coming in, but how many people are going out too, and what are they doing? You know, how are we showing that we're not creating dependency and that we're actually, because the goal isn't to be, we would want to see a smaller food bank. Actually, is what I would love to see a smaller food bank.
Even their goal.
Because they're going to be, yes. I don't hear the reporting that I would like to hear reported on how they're doing that or what is the data?
So just a couple of comments, acknowledging that it can be difficult to share or voice perspectives that might not be widely popular. So thank you for sharing that, and anyone else, would say the same thing. And that I don't think this is necessarily a new perspective or narrative, and I think that we've heard it before in this committee. I think there is a counter narrative, and I think that there are probably folks, maybe not listening right now, but folks who could come in and give us some more, more to think about, and give everyone more to think about. So that's all I'll say about that. Any other thoughts, Dr.?
I was just going to respond to that. It would be good to be able to respond to those people because I hear both sides, and it would be good to actually have some information in front of you when you do respond. So I think that's it.
Yeah, it's math, guys. 40 hours time, the minimum wage is 14.01, which is high, almost double the federal minimum wage. But let's say a person is working a better job and they're getting $17 an hour. That's $680 a week. Both spouses are working, times that by 2. That's $1,360. Let's assume they get paid for 52 weeks a year. They get a paid vacation. So times that by 52 weeks, that's $70,720. And I got 2 kids at home. Okay, so the family of 4 is 56,000 and something. They're $14,000 over that. They lose the school meal thing. That's going to cost them. It's a figure of $1,500 a year to buy school lunches. That's $3,000 on top of that. And if they're trying to have a mortgage and whatnot, or pay for a car and stuff, it's tough. And I think, proud of me, yeah.
I am.
I think when you look at what our contributions are to the Vermont Food Bank and Hunger Free Vermont and whatnot, I think it's a small number. I'd like to know what the number is. Just so when those people ask, we have an answer for them.
Yes, yes.
Cause I think it's a small number to help our neighbors that are, to keep them from getting more vulnerable, to keep them from losing their houses, to decide, do I buy heat? Do I pay rent or do I buy food? And so just like the universal school meals and all of this, it's imperative. And a lot of that money gets recycled back into our Vermont farmers and our Vermont farm economy. And it goes to that 30 by 30. So that's an answer you can get to people. Yeah. So my answer is this. I don't like this, but I love this. I love giving them a hand up. So if, for a little bit, federal changes to supposed federal changes come into the SNAP card, EBT card, however you want to call it. Potato chips, cheese puffs, soda pop are going to be struck off that list. Right or wrong, obviously I drank too much soda and ate too many potato chips in my life. But
Second line.
yeah, yeah. Mr. Iron Gut abs there. Most interested man in the world. But you have people, you know, if that encourage them to use their food dollars wiser, that's great. And if they can, we heard testimony from the gentleman today, Mr.
Francis. Is it Francis?
Yeah, it was Francis. And, you know, he got help and he is in a much better place. He's 72 years old. He's in a much better place. I'm sure his social security doesn't go very far at all. He's getting help. He is volunteering his time now to help others. That's part of that hand up. And now he's helping to give a hand up. So it's all good. Yes, are there abuses of the system, Greg? Absolutely. There's abuses of the current youth system. There's abuses of everything. And that's just society in general. Not everybody is as noble as we are. But, you know.
Representative Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sort of along the same track, in terms of things that might be interesting to sort of give a fuller picture. I've worked in human services a lot of years. And a couple of years ago, I was working for an organization that served individuals that were unhoused. And we had a sister organization within our umbrella that provided, you could call it a food pantry. And I also have a food pantry in the town next to me. And I heard testimony from when I was in institutions multiple times from these kind of organizations in the last 12 to 24 months about the huge increase in requests for need for food supplies. So not necessarily somebody who like, oh, I've always got it and I need more and I'm never going to get off it, but requests for food who people had never asked for food before, help with food before, and now they can't afford it. And so with all the different factors that families have to deal with, or even individuals, it's tricky. You know, food is more expensive. Taxes are expensive, you know, education is expensive. Our cars, I mean, like you put all those things together and we have a lot of people that food is an issue when it didn't used to be. And I mean, I'd be interested to hear, you know, for 20 minutes, somebody to come in from economic services and talk about what is the cost to feed a family of four, you know, and, you know, not just in terms of qualifying, but how is this different from what it was, you know, 5 years ago or something like that? Because I know in my community, that's what I've been hearing is that like, they're like, oh my gosh, we can't even meet the need. We have so many people coming in that didn't used to need help and now they do. And so trying to find that balance.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of time we hear stories, we hear anecdotes, we see pictures. Somebody stopped me in the hallway this morning and showed me a picture of the shelves in their food bank.
Yeah.
But then we also, you know, want to rely on data, and to the extent that we can get that data, I think it serves us all. Representative Bernard.
Right, and on that note, I was just curious if we could get somebody in from DCF, the Economic Services Division, to just come in and explain those programs. Thank you. I didn't know Sedonia could also sing it online.
Good idea, Representative.
I just wanna respond, Greg, to, second Chairman Durfee's, endorsement of your courage or willingness to speak out something that's sensitive and maybe, not popular. I remember like it was yesterday, maybe the first few weeks in this committee, there was someone sitting there who had gone to law school for a semester or more, I don't know. And I told a story because I had been fueling up my log truck on a Sunday up at Maple Fields, and they said, you know, all I had to do is see you working. But there, and then and I said, you know, that is anecdotal, that is not testimony, it's not appropriate testimony. So it was educational embarrassing for me. I find this discussion where it's basically a request for some data, and I think it's nice to see this committee weigh in on sensitive issues and to get some data, so it's not just airing some grievance. Or thank you for doing that.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not a grievance, it's just hopefully a healthy desire, I guess I would say, but yeah, if there's a, you know, hearing a lot about need, I know, but it'd be nice to see a little more data on what I was.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll invite
Thanks.
DCF in. There are other organizations, some of them we've heard from, who may have also numbers that they can share and help us think about how do we address those concerns?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Representative O'Brien.
I have a takeaway from yesterday that I'd be interested in hearing any thought on, is that what I was hearing was that,
Hang on a second. Gentlemen, just because the mic picks up even the whispers, I think we should try and keep it a one conversation.
you know, just from yesterday's field trip, when I look at what's happening, say, you know, with logging and what's happening at FPR, it seems to me that, you know, they're all behind on their plans for logging, like way behind. And it seems like, right, there used to be a lot more staff. And so the problem there seems to be like, well, if we had, you know, 1, 2, or 3 more dedicated foresters who were in charge of getting these logging jobs going. But the problem here is that, you know, within the agency, they're told to level fund, you know, or cut funds. And so I didn't know if this committee and maybe House Commerce, we could work on an economic development bill. That because if you essentially prime the pump with some foresters, then you get huge economic benefits down the road.
Imagine 374,000 acres we all own. Now they want a small percentage to be old growth, and that's fine. We're never going to see it old growth. We're going to time out. Our grandkids will see it, hopefully. If they could manage that, it's actually an income driver.
Exactly.
You know, I realize the state does extra, and Jed could really light us up on this. They do extra things that not necessarily happen on private lands, but they still don't need to lose money on it, and it could cover positions. And then if Justin Lathrop pulls into a job like he's on and he's doing 1,000 acres and he's there for a couple of years, and the economic driver that is for him and his crew and the sawmills, and we could turn it into the dang dairy industry and be bringing in $4 billion a year.
Yeah. Just for those who weren't there, or maybe who didn't pick up on it because it was very cold. The project, we went to visit yesterday, had just started within the past month maybe, and it had originally been part of the management plan to happen in 2012. So 12, 13 years gone by. And my understanding is that it is due largely to a resource issue within the department. And it's a challenge for us to, even when we do create positions and get them passed and into the budget, then, somebody has to fill that position. There are so many vacancies right now, and some of those are workforce related, but maybe not all of them.
Yeah. I have a thought on that dilemma. And it goes to the state instead of a state personnel coming out and inspecting design and observing deep observation pits for subsurface sewage. They have moved to letting licensed graduate engineers prove the test, the plan, the design. It would be far more cost effective rather than adding state employees. You need to be a licensed graduate forester to practice and represent a landowner to be called a forester, but there are 200 plus Vermont licensed foresters that for including some supervision, or not even the supervision, the actual on the ground working on a forestry plan. This one was for bird habitat, migratory bird habitat was a primary goal to this, but that would be an option where for 3,000 or 4,000 a job for smaller jobs, or maybe more, they could do a dozen jobs in a year for half the cost and for more efficiency.
Yeah.
It's an idea that occurred to me.
Yeah, I think that so a couple of things
And
that
I'd be happy to talk to Danny about that, or
certainly feel free to talk to anyone. And then in terms of actually moving ahead, we could, be making a list of things and for a committee bill. It's also still an option for anybody to put a short form bill in, even though the deadline was last week for regular bills. If you want to have something just, to have, up on the wall, or to help just make sure that we don't lose track of it, that's something you could do to just reach out to Ledge Council and do that.
And even though we were all standing in the cold, hearing Justin Lathrop speak, the access to stumpage is low quality, as the majority of that was. Without access to stumpage, standing trees that can be harvested, it's really, there's no continuing generational, the loggers will age out and we will lose that tool for all the diverse benefits of active management. So I thought hearing from him and not just me talking about this stuff was really impactful.